Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip, and Jeff is actually out tonight. We have a very special guest who's guest hosting, sitting in Jeff's chair tonight, and that is none other than Mark Phillips. What's going on, Mark?
Hey, Chip, man, it's so good to be back with you tonight. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And I was like looking back. I remember we had you on all the time, and I was looking back. I was like, could it have been like 9 months or a year ago you were on? It doesn't make sense, but apparently, yeah, the time flies when you're having fun. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. So, for example, the crypto adoption is happening. It's like in the future, but it's kind of happening now. We're going to get into some stats to kind of show that. And when it comes to the SEC, they just have to get out of the way. And let's let the adults handle it, because it seems like they're stepping in it every single moment. So if you guys are ready, if you're ready, Mark, you ready to go?
You bet. I am ready.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
So Mark, so why don't you tell a little bit about yourself too, for people that may not know you, which I'd be shocked, but I'm bumping into you on Twitter all the time.
Short version is I got into crypto 4+ years ago, back in 2017. My son introduced me to it, and I slipped right down the rabbit hole and haven't come back since. It is kind of all-consuming, like a lot of other folks in the space. It gets you and doesn't let go. Beautiful.
And we had, by the way, we had Alex on last night, Coining 203, and he just said, "Hey, that guy looks better than me on the screen." So there you go.
No, and I don't have a cool motorcycle anymore either. So or the radical car that he's got. So I am envious.
You don't have no Black Betty behind you, that's for sure. But you have a lot of books. I'm sure you've read every single one of them, which is awesome.
My running joke was I wrote them.
Oh, there you go. It's like, wow, that's a lot. You've been busy. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's. Why don't we get this party?
XRP to do something. I had time on my hands,
Well, we all did, and we're all still waiting patiently. And when it happens. But we'll have to see when that's going to be. It's going to be some point. But I wanted to, guys, throw in where you're from, city and country. Always like to look at that, see where everybody's coming in from tonight. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to throw this up right here. But I want to talk about this adoption. Let's take a look at these numbers, Mark. This is interesting. This was a tweet put out by Blockworks. And almost 11.5% of adults worldwide own crypto. So it's not like the future. I mean, that's not a bad number, right? As far as 2021 is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you sort of dig into those numbers, you'll see where some of those countries are really out ahead of the United States. Nigeria, for example. One of the things we were sort of toying around with in the conversation before we started was, what if those are on the receiving end of all of these corridors that Ripple and company have been setting up for cross-border remittances? We think about it from, what does this do to volume and demand for XRP, and what does that do to price? But the reality is there are people on the receiving end who are depending on that money to come through those corridors. And so, Nigeria might be a perfect example. I think there's others, Mexico, and I would be willing to bet Philippines is probably up there too.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's see what's behind the numbers. So there you go. Check that out. You have Nigeria. That's like 1 in 4 people in Nigeria basically are holding. And it's funny how they cleverly let off. They got to have a Dogecoin on there, right? And Cardano, Binance. The weird thing is Binance Coin. I was like, okay, I get Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's like the 2 market leaders, but all right. You got Malaysia at 18%. Australia, we have a lot of Aussies in here tonight. And Indonesia. I mean, you kind of see the trend, right? It's on the other side. It's basically over in Asia there where you see all of it. But look at India.
Yeah.
15%. You got 1.4 billion people there? It's a decent amount of people there.
Yeah. So you made the point earlier, and I was being very, Ripple XRP centric, but you made a really valid point earlier that a lot of those countries, they have a high percentage of the population that is either unbanked or underbanked. These are folks that just frankly don't have enough money or don't live close enough to a bank for it to be feasible for the bank to provide any services to them. It just doesn't make economic sense. So now when you give them the opportunity to have access to financial services, via crypto, via a phone, all of a sudden the adoption rate just goes through the roof. I mean, I would expect in a lot of these countries, you'll see the adoption rate going up as fast as William Shatner in Little Rocket.
Yeah, that was fun that was actually fun to watch. It was great. But where's the camera inside? I mean, I want to see them all sitting around like losing it, like with the faces. That's what I want to see the video of at some point.
Yeah.
But look at the U.S. So the U.S. right around average is about 11.5%. You have the U.S. at 10.5%, South Africa, Brazil, Canada, Ireland, and it's like we have, what I don't see on this list, which I'm kind of shocked at, because we have a bunch of people in here. We have somebody from Wales, we have a bunch of people from the UK in here, and I don't see the UK on here anywhere. And also, too, where are any of the other European countries here? I don't see anything on here. But again, it cuts off here, right? I mean, the list continues to go. Who knows what's right underneath Ireland? But Ireland, part of the United Kingdom, I guess. So Ireland at 8.5%, totally outweighing, between Wales, Scotland, Great Britain. It's pretty strong showing. But I look at Ireland too, as they're always kind of ahead of the curve, especially when they were looking at lowering their corporate tax rate.
Yeah.
They were looking at attracting business, get business over there. And, not only that, but they've got great beer, Mark, let's face it. Okay. Great beer, great scenery, great people. So.
Yeah. I wonder what that, there's apparently some agreement in the works for some sort of standardization for international tax rates or tax rates among these different countries, so that countries or companies won't be able to do tax arbitrage where they just hop and skip around to different countries, whoever's offering them the best tax deal.
I kind of don't like that idea. I kind of get where they're going with it. They kind of want to make an equal playing field, but what they're also doing is taking away competition. It's kind of like, it's like, that's the thing about the US, in the US where I'm at, it's like in Florida, we don't have a state tax. And so some people are attracted to that. And it's parts of New York City, depending on where you live, or even where I grew up in New York, it was like 9.5%, 11.5% state tax. Then you've got your federal tax. So that's where I don't really like that. I think that should be set by the countries and by really the people, supposedly, if they're having true representation of people that are representing them. I get it from a standpoint of like, hey, let's try to figure this out that works for everybody. But ultimately, I think it's going to have the opposite effect, where now let's all raise it to 20%. Now let's go for 25. And it's like, whoa. Now we've all bought into this. And then, that whole centralization part is what I'm a little bit disturbed about. But
yeah, I agree. Competition is a good thing for consumers.
Yeah, and and that's kind of the thing. That's one of the reasons that Google, Facebook, and some of the big corporations from the U.S. said, hey, if we're going to set up shop in Europe, why not go to Ireland? And I would say, why not? I mean, but they did get some tax breaks. But again, that's the name of the game. But you're also providing jobs. You're also providing, to some extent, a lot of money in the economy and infrastructure. So it's pretty good. I thought maybe, let's, Gary Gensler was on, he was being interviewed. Now he was talking about the ETF. I want to get your thoughts on this. Pull up this little video here of Gary Gensler talking about it. I kind of want to see, where he's actually going with this. It's a very short clip, and hopefully we'll have better audio tonight. Let's see. Here you go. Let's listen.
Raft of cheering people down here from ProShares. The ProShares Bitcoin ETF, the futures ETF, is starting trading. Just started a few moments ago. I have to ask you, can you explain to our viewers why you chose to allow a Bitcoin futures ETF to begin trading, but have not yet approved a regular Bitcoin ETF?
Bob, thank you for that question. Just to give you a little context, I think that we in the official sector should be technology neutral, but not policy neutral. And so what we've tried.
Wait a second. Let's just break that down. We should be technology neutral, but not policy neutral. Mark, what's he talking about there?
I have no idea.
It doesn't make sense, right?
No, I would think they should be neutral, period. Be clear about what the rules are. Enforce it when you catch somebody breaking the rules, and you enforce it to protect the investors, to protect the system, so that the investors know that they're dealing with a level playing field, and that, you know, the people who continue to operate in the system are doing it on the level. But they shouldn't be. I don't think they should have an opinion or a preference for which technology somebody happens to use or anything else. And so the policy ought to be agnostic to any of the players. And it doesn't appear that that's the direction they've been going, certainly in the crypto space and maybe even on these ETFs.
Yeah, it's a kind of a weird answer. And by the way, Hans Loaded, he said he heard chains in the background. So I don't know if that's true or not, but he heard something going on in the background there. But let's listen into the rest of it, like, because he's off. Sometimes he gets off on a tangent, and I don't think he knows where he's going. But anyway, technology neutral, and let's listen back again.
We in the official sector should be technology neutral, but not policy neutral. And so what we're trying to do is ensure to the best we can within our authorities to bring projects into the investor protection perimeter. And so what you just mentioned, Bitcoin futures have been overseen by our sibling agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which I was once honored and proud to serve there. And that's been 4 years. And some of these applications came in and went effective. As you said, one of them went effective with regard to those products over at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange that our sibling agency oversees.
I think the important thing here is you've made it clear in the past that this does not have some of the concerns that approving a full Bitcoin ETF would have. You don't have people breaking into exchanges, for example. You don't have problems with fraud or manipulation. Was that a factor? It seems that was a factor in the fact that you went ahead and allowed the Bitcoin futures ETF. You don't have those particular problems here.
Well, while I'm not going to get into any one application or project, I think what you have here is a product that's been overseen for 4 years by a U.S. federal regulator, the CFTC, and that's being wrapped inside of something which is within our jurisdiction called the Investment Company Act of 1940. So we have some ability to bring it inside of investor protection. It's still a highly speculative asset class, and listeners should understand that underneath this, it still has that same aspect of volatility and speculation. But there's our sister agency has overseen this for 4 years. And then it brings it inside, as I said, an 80-year-old law here at the SEC.
You know what I heard, Chip?
Break it down. I don't know what he's talking about. I'll be honest with you.
What I heard him say, this is my little translator, was it's a commodity. Bitcoin's a commodity. CFTC has been regulating it as a commodity. And so if you offer a future product on that commodity, then it's essentially the CFTC's, but because it's being offered through one of the stock exchanges, that's the SEC's bailiwick. But he's basically saying we're doing them a favor. They've already approved it. They've already vetted it because it is by nature a commodity. They've already defined it that way. And it's been repackaged as a futures product on a commodity. Therefore, we don't really have any problem with it because it's not ours to make the decision on. So he can still say that and not give clarity about any particular project, which he really doesn't want to do. So he just sort of tap danced around it by saying, CFTC's been regulating it for 4 years. It should be fine.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And he talks about the investor protection. We're going to bring it into the investor protection. What about when they went after library? What about when they went after, other projects, a Ripple, for example? Where's the investor protection when the market cap, was, lost 15 billion, was eroded and erased? So it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, which investors are they looking at?
I think the investor protection thing is one of those things that you say because it sounds good. And who's going to argue with that? You're an investor. I'm an investor. Yeah, of course we want to be protected. I don't feel protected. Do you feel protected?
Oh, never. But don't you think it's a little odd? Like the futures, if you had asked me like 2 weeks ago, say, hey, either a Bitcoin futures ETF is going to be approved or just a regular Bitcoin ETF, which I would have selected a regular Bitcoin ETF. Because it is, I mean, futures are majorly, he's like, it's highly speculative. But isn't that, Mark, isn't that his same sort of argument when it comes to crypto? They're highly speculative assets. Well, not potentially like futures could be.
Look, here's the thing. You can step outside. No, you don't even have to leave your house now. You can, on this same computer, you can fire up one of the sports betting apps on your phone, on your computer, at the 7-Eleven, doesn't matter. You can go and buy a lottery ticket. You can bet on a game. Is that speculative? It's the definition of speculative. Okay, that's perfectly legal. So you're not doing us any favors if you're allowing 100% speculation, but then you're basically bleeding, and I mean hemorrhaging value,
right,
at a certain investors and certain companies in the name of, okay, I'm on a rant now, in the name of investor protection. I don't feel protected. In fact, I was looking around here earlier for that $200+ billion that got bled off of us when they filed a lawsuit. I can't find it. Where did it go? I think it went to Bitcoin and Ether.
It's gone. It's gone forever. So this is from XRP Speedboat. Thank you for that. He says, hey, Mark, lighting's not so bright on this side, but is that a Wyeth painting behind you?
No, that's actually a Robert Taylor painting of some World War II aircraft over Holland. But
wow.
Yeah, I do like Wyeth, all the Wyeths.
I'll say which Wyeth. But have you ever been to the museum?
I've seen a number of Wyeths. Yeah, I like Andrew and I like his dad both.
Yep, I do too. Yep, I'd say they're really strong. It's
good
really
eyes.
Great. It's really good though, man. So it's like completely off topic, but relevant in its own way. I want to throw this up here because, again, this right here, this is something that Charlie Gasperino put out a little bit today, and I want to get your thoughts on this one because here we go again. It's like AMC, the apes are gonna hate this. No evidence of massive naked shorting. The SEC says GME did not experience persistent fails to deliver at the individual clearing member level. Specifically, staff observed that most clearing members were able to clear any fails relatively quickly. Thoughts?
Well, I think they got burned and caught off guard with the GameStop thing, and really got up in arms. They went to Congress and they said, you got to do something about this. They went to the SEC, said, you got to do something about this. And the reality is they got really, really bothered when everyday retailers organized themselves on social media and played their game and beat them at their game. That's never happened before because we've not had these tools, the organizing ability, the ability to share information instantaneously like we do now. That scared the crap out of them. I'm sure it did. And I think, crypto is doing the same thing.
For the first time ever, really, they never thought that they could be taken down or taken off guard or like pushed off their position, but they kind of initiated and did it themselves. And this is the thing. It always seems like the investor protection is going the wrong way. It's like, who are we protecting here? We're protecting banks.
It's incumbent protection.
Incumbent protection, right? You get the luxury.
Oligarch protection. That's what it is. It's who's got the big bags of money. That's who we're going to protect.
And that's a sort of a sad place to be. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, that's a really bizarre place to be. I mean,
well, that's why I was so angry earlier this week. I'm still mad. I think I'm turning
your tweets. You were on fire, man.
I think I'm just getting really old and curmudgeonly, but I'm starting to turn into like Dennis Miller or Bill
Maher
or one of those guys. So stop me if I get too curmudgeonly. Just tell me to take a Geritol, but or give me the OK Boomer. But
Okay, Boomer. You said give it to me. All right.
Thank you. I'll take that. No, the reason I got so angry was not at what say Coinbase was doing or what the Ethereum folks and Consensus were doing. And I know everybody's just wrapped around the axle about Joe Lubin, and his smugness and smarminess is kind of nauseating, but I'm not mad at him. He's been behaving rationally, given that he's a businessman. I'm mad at the folks who are being paid by you and me, the taxpayers, whose job it is to provide a level playing field and some protection for us, so we're not taken advantage of by those who have better access to information, better access to deals before they're made public. That's what they're supposed to be protecting us against. And the appearance is they're actually doing the opposite, that they're doing everything they can to protect those guys, to protect the big money. And that's not what we're paying them for.
No, we're not. And, you know, by the way, Jeff's big shout out. Hey, on the chain family. So good to see you there, Jeff. No, I think you're kind of right. I mean, everybody wants to look after their own interests, right? Everybody has to look after what they're doing. And you can argue one way or another, but some of the stuff that went on, I mean, I don't think we ever thought that this case would get to that point of where, okay, well, let's see what was said in those meetings, and let's see how many people reviewed the Bill Hinman speech, and let's see, and it's all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's all protected now. You can't do this. We don't even want to provide it for the in-camera review. We're just taking a back seat here. Nothing to see here. Move on. Go on. Yep. By the way, let's bring the focus back to what this is all about. You sold unregistered securities, and it's like, well, no, I mean,
yeah, and if you think about it, so you listen to Gary Gensler. He is okay. I'll give him this. He is consistent on his talking points. Whoever did his media training, it took, and he does not stray from those talking points. And one of the things he always goes back to is investor protection, and you want to protect people against fraud and all that. He keeps going back to that. But if you look at the lawsuit, it does not mention fraud. It does not assert that anybody, Ripple, Garlinghouse, Larson, none of them committed any kind of fraud. There's no assertion of that. It just says, they sold unregistered securities, and we would like our $1.4 billion, please, for catching.
Well, Mark, it also said they acted recklessly. It was like, you acted recklessly. Well, okay. Well, what does that look like? How do you define recklessly? What is recklessly? That's something you throw in, and good luck proving it, because first you have to define it. The reality is, this is not about, calling Ripple on the carpet. It's not about protecting you and me as investors. In fact, if anything, it has damaged us. And that's why John Deaton's got, some 50,000 people signed up for this class action lawsuit. The fact that he got amici status and is able to present information as a friend of the court is huge. The fact that we're now starting to get media coverage of it and starting to get some congressional interest is huge, because this is what then could force sort of the curtain to come down and us to really find out what actually happened and who's actually in bed on this thing and why it actually took place the way it did. Yeah, and I'm waiting for that too. I want to throw this off. This is Susie. She says, you guys have a YouTube membership so that I can support your channel. You're always reporting the most amazing information. Always grateful. Thank you for that, Susie. And that's one way you can support us. We don't have a YouTube sort of like membership. We looked at that, and what we chose to do was sort of like put it more on our control. But we are rolling out something in probably the next couple of weeks. Will be a way to do that, but also get some benefit as well. So there's going to be something that's going to be on the chain.io. We're currently in the middle of building that and sort of like setting that up. But yeah, we'll do something along the lines of that. There's going to be something, and it's going to be really interesting, but we're not quite there yet. And that's the best way that you can support it. But I always say, look, the best way you can support it, come in here, chat, put comments up, share it with friends. That's the best way you can support the channel. It helps us grow and gets out to more people. And that's really what's fantastic for us. And I'll tell you, we've had a really big growth spurt here recently, Mark, and in no small amount of, wonderment of how that happened. It's all up to you guys, because you guys share it. You guys, the more you like it, the more you upvote it, the more it starts making the recommendations. So it really, that's one of the ways you guys help. Smash that like button. That's why YouTubers always say that. You're like, why do they always have to say that? Well, because it sort of tickles that little uvula, which is the algorithm, that little thing that hangs down in your mouth. It tickles that little guy, gets it all shaky, and then YouTube starts recommending it. And comments help too. That's why I was like, hey, throw a comment down there. Those kind of things help. And that's where you see a lot of the growth from really strong YouTubers that, are 100,000, 500,000, a million. They never stop saying that. Hey, if it's your first time here, make sure you like, subscribe, click that notification bell. Because if you click that notification bell, you'll be notified the next time we go live. And that's why we put up these little guys like, hey, there it is right there. Boom, boom, boom. Or here it is right here. Go ahead and click the like, the subscribe button, and that notification bell. And that's why we do that. But thank you for that, Susie. And I know we got a little bit off topic, but it happens sometimes.
Well, and Chip, you and Jeff really have built a great channel, providing tons and tons of information you got some people that come on here and they tell things every day that I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And, really caused me to think. So yeah, so do what he said, hit the like and subscribe, tickle that algorithm, and help him grow the channel. Well said.
Yeah. Thank you for the compliment. But it's like I said, it's a growth thing. We feed off of, if we were just sitting here doing this, like if we were in a studio somewhere, it'd be a little bit more difficult. What really makes it worth it is when you see these comments going by and there's like always a sub conversation happening. Yep. That's what makes it worth it. So listen, I do have some of the Garling House, the real audio, the real video this time. Should we listen to a little bit of that? It's kind of long, but maybe we should.
That's good. I had trouble hearing it earlier when it was on Twitter.
Yeah, let's see if this works. And if it doesn't, guys, I don't want to go forward because last night we had some audio issues. And Mark, let me know if you don't hear audio. I have it cranked up as big as possible here, but let me know.
Brad, thanks for joining us.
That's super low, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gosh. All right. Well, I was like, I can barely hear that. How is that so low? I just don't understand. And that is up at Fox Business too. That's what's crazy. This is a national network, and I can't even. Let me try it over here and see if it's any better.
Hey, while you're doing that, Sheridan, thank you very much, man. That's a super nice comment.
Where is it? Let me put it up there. Where is it?
By the way, he's coming in from Croatia, which is, if you had never been there, God, it's beautiful. You got to go to Croatia.
That's Sir John?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Croatia, and I got to go hang out with Sir John one of these times. So
yeah, it is gorgeous.
Oh, yeah, here he goes right there. The Croats owe him much, and will always be thankful to him for what he has done for our country. There you go. Sir John is he's a good dude, and in his blog, I used to like watching it because he would drink different beers and whiskey and all that kind of stuff, and we'd argue over whiskey and stuff like that too, which is awesome. And I want to say to EC2189 KQ, thank you for that support. Apart sounding off the bell, maybe cat videos. Yeah, cat videos are fun. Can always do that. Instead of hitting the bell, a cat video. Okay. Here's what about this one, Mark? What do you think about that potential ETF?
I think it's inevitable. Grayscale Barry Silver just filed for a BTC ETF. What they want to do is take the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust and convert it into a spot ETF. I think if anybody has the traction to do it in the near term, it's probably them. We're talking tens of billions of dollars that are already in it. That would be great. And I think an XRP ETF. All bets are off once this lawsuit's out of the way.
Yeah, and at some point, so let me throw this. I want to throw this. Oh man, I had something up there. This was the kind of the story of my life where you have something up there, and then you lose it, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, I'll go ahead and find it again. But yeah, there's a couple things. It was kind of a big news day too. We heard a little bit more about Facebook and a partnership they have coming up. Let me see if I can pull that story up. This is an interesting one. So Facebook's piloting its crypto wallet in the U.S. So yep. Let's take a look at that.
And who is on the back end of that for custody?
Who is the custody on that?
Coinbase.
Oh, Coinbase, right. That's right. Coinbase is on the custody of a lot of these.
Coinbase is killing it in the news this week.
On the custody side, that's right.
Yeah, so they just announced their partnership with the NBA, WNBA, and several other leagues.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome too. And there's some other stuff going on with the NBA as well. That's what's happening in sponsorships. It's just really great because this is why the whole theme of this, this evening, what we're talking about in this video is the whole idea of it's not the future, it's now. Crypto adopt. We're like, when mass adoption happens, well, adoption's happening. And if only 10% of the US and as high as 25% of Nigeria and everything in between, that means we're early days. If we until you get saturation of 50-60% of the population, that's pretty early, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We are still incredibly early. It doesn't feel like it because we've been, here sort of eyeball deep in it and waiting for so long, but we are still going back to your, that first graph that you put up that showed the adoption rates in different countries. We're so incredibly early. We don't realize how early we actually are.
We don't. And I think that, when you've been in a while, I think that's where sometimes people lose their patience or like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. That's fine. But you can't equate it to, like, if you look at the 90s, you look at 93, 94, 7 years later, it got you to 2000. And that was the big, the dot-com boom, the bust really, 2000, 2001. But, we're 25, 30 years into that experiment. Yeah. This is, I don't think you can put it on equal pairing only because Bitcoin, we're looking at, it's what, 12 years now, right? I mean, we don't have any other altcoins. I was looking at, I think it was 2014 or 2015. I think Jeff and I one night looked at the top 10 altcoins and like 3 or 4 of them don't even exist anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we're like, wait, who is that? And you don't remember because you weren't paying attention then.
And, the adoption rate, Raoul Pal recently was talking about, how fast this is actually unfolding. And he was talking about when the internet first started getting started and getting big leading up to 2000 and to the whole .com thing. And he compared that and the growth rate year over year for the original internet emergence and then the growth rate here. And it's like 3 or 4 times the growth rate now. So yeah, it seems like it's taken a long time, but it's happening really fast by comparison, and it's accelerating. I think what's going to happen is wait until you start having Jim Cramer yelling about, you got to buy whatever coin, and you start having the banks and the investment houses and the retirement funds and the financial advisors all saying, yeah, you need to get, some exposure in the crypto market. And that becomes not the fringe thing. It becomes the mainstream thing. And you start to see it on the business reports and the CNBC tickers and all that. And you're seeing these crazy green candles and everybody wants in.
Right. That's when it really begins. You're right. So Cramer had his little sort of dip his toe in the water with Bitcoin. He was in it. He was out of it. He paid off his mortgage. He did a bunch of different things, right? But he's still a little bit on the skeptical side. And it's still, like you said, maybe a little bit on the outside fringe. But it's amazing to see some of the business leaders too. You got like Mark Cuban, who's all in, and of course you got Michael Saylor, with $6 billion in Bitcoin plus rising. Who knows? That probably flipped over another $500 million as Bitcoin's rising.
Did you hear Cuban the other night? He was doing was it a Twitter live maybe, with a bunch of Bitcoin maxis, and they started going after him, and whatever filters he had, he switched them off because he lit them up.
Oh, that would have been beautiful to see that.
Worth going back to listen to because he lit them up. I
would love to see that. I like the fact that more and more are recording those and like making them available, because sometimes you're like in really good conversation. You're like, wait, what did they say? And you're like, what was the name of that? And you lose it forever.
Yeah.
So he went scorched earth on them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Burned it down.
They were accusing him of being elitist and you don't know what you're talking about, old man. And you're sitting there on your and all this stuff. And he's like, look.
Let me tell you something about Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, this is one of the greatest things ever. And I remember this so well from the 90s. He started something, he was a bartender too, but a very savvy, smart business guy. He started up broadcast.com. Mm-hmm. And one of the greatest things about broadcast.com at the time was they signed all these deals. Okay, we're going to do all the major sports and we're going to do all this. They had all these deals in place. And every time they would go, this is the best thing. Every time they would go demo it, they'd go someplace where they had like, T1s in there. And so you could actually sort of like watch it. But everywhere else, nobody had access because we just weren't there with the bandwidth yet. And in fact, they sold it for
buffer.
What's that?
You got to watch the spinning beach ball buffer.
Yeah, I was lucky because I was like at a time we had T1, so I was able to watch broadcast.com. But anywhere else couldn't watch it from home. Nobody could, and this was the brilliance.
Dial up, it ain't happening.
He sold that for $1 billion, and that thing collapsed under its own weight in 6 months. I'm like, if you don't think Mark Cuban is a genius, then you haven't really studied his business prowess and what he's absolutely been able to accomplish over the last 20 years. And buying the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, he picked that up for a wing, a song and a prayer or whatever, as they say.
It was a sound idea. I mean, it was basically YouTube. It was too early.
Too early, like 15 years too early, yeah.
Before this scrolls off, did you see Legendary's comment? Kramer didn't have a coronary trying to follow cryptos.
Yeah, his vein will pop.
Gasket.
Yeah, that's true. I would say that too. That's a good comment, Legendary. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Docs Gambling? Good to see you in here, man. Good to see you. So this is a fun. I saw this today, and I almost choked, and I was laughing so hard because it's really great. If you guys know who Johnny Lawrence is, Johnny Lawrence is he's the one that made all those cool XRP animations where the X goes in and changes into a fiat and goes back and forth. He's a 3D motion artist. He put this up, and I almost nearly lost it, but I'm going to say it to you, and then I'll throw it up on the screen. So, Mark, what's the difference between Ripple and XRP?
Time to settle.
It's really close.
Just 3 seconds.
Yeah, to settle. One takes a year while the other one takes 3.5 seconds. I was like, that's just brilliant right there, man.
It's so true.
They put that at 3:40 in the morning, which is fantastic. That's a great one. Now, anybody in the know and stuff, you guys can give them that. Hey, what's the difference between Ripple and XRP? Well, Ripple's the company that makes software. No, and XRP's no. To settle. One takes a year, roughly around a year or so. The other one takes 3.5 seconds. That's brilliant.
Speaking of which, do you think we're headed to a settlement? Gasperino asked Garlinghouse.
They did.
Twice now about settlement and, what does the future hold? And do you see a settlement in the works? What do you see? And what do you think about Brad's answer?
I think Brad's been, I got to say, in that interview, he's been forthcoming, right? I mean, I think he's saying what he's allowed to say. I'm sure the lawyers gave him a good earful, like, hey, listen, here's what you can say, here's what you can't say. But I will say this, I think anything can happen at this point, right? I think everything's a possibility. I haven't been much in the whole settlement thing because of what Brad said is that he says that he's not going to be able to get, if we don't walk out of this with clarity for, the digital asset XRP, then it doesn't make any sense. And I think he alluded to this back after the suit was filed back in December of 2020 when he came out and said, asked him in an interview, and he said, well, look, we tried to settle. We would have loved to settle. But if you can't get clarity now, by the same token, if when this suit was dropped, they said in that complaint, that 78, 80-page complaint, okay, we're going back in time. We believe at the time that an unregistered security was sold because at that time, XRP, we don't believe, was sufficiently decentralized. However, we believe that today's XRP is decentralized. That would have been it. Okay, let's settle, whatever, because now there's some clarity. And one of the things that I liked about what he said in that interview today or yesterday, Mark, was he said, we're probably going to be one of the only cryptos that will get some clarity. The only one, because this is going to force it to get some clarity. You're either going to say, yes, it's decentralized now, but how different is it, Mark? Let me pose the question back to you. If we have to compare apples to apples or oranges to oranges, let's compare it against Ethereum. Mm-hmm. If we go back to 2014, 2015, and how did the Ethereum Foundation raise money?
Well, they did an ICO, and they did it in public.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's sort of the gist of the XRP community's pushback and the genesis of John Deaton's lawsuit is, look, you're not playing, one, you haven't made the rules clear, but what is clear is that you've got different rules for different players. And what, the apparent clarity that the SEC gave to Bitcoin and Ethereum, they've withheld from everybody else, and in fact have gone after other companies, including Ripple. it makes one wonder why. When I wonder why somebody's doing something, I try to figure out their motivation. And that usually starts with follow the money.
Always.
So we could go down a whole different rabbit trail on this one, but I think it's pretty obvious that there were folks working on the other side that set this up that are not operating in good faith, and that as a result, you've got this drug out lawsuit that I believe is not necessarily intended to kill Ripple or XRP. I think it's just intended to delay it. Delay it as long as you can to give ETH in the Ethereum community as much runway as they can possibly get to get traction. They're still trying to get 2.0 off the ground. That's 2 years behind. We're about the same age, so I hope I didn't just out you. But
No, we're the same age.
we're about the same age.
You can call me Boomer.
I Boomer. You're carrying
Hey,
it.
Boomer.
But
When people call me Boomer, I go nuts. I'm like, all right. I have other choice names for them.
there you go.
I asked them if they want to know my pronouns. I go, since we're on equal footing here, do you want to know my pronouns? I'm like, one begins with an F, the other one begins with U. So you can kind of fill in the blanks there.
Pick one. Yeah. So, but we're old enough to remember the video cassette wars, between Betamax and VHS.
Of course.
And the whole point of that was to whoever gets enough traction has critical mass and becomes the de facto standard for the industry. Okay. Betamax was better technology.
You had a Betamax, didn't you?
I know. We had VHS. Did you?
I had a Beta, yeah.
Yeah, well, of course, because it was better technology. My parents were not early adopters, so by the time they bought a machine, and this was a big top-loading thing. But, yeah, it was like you're backing up a bulldozer or something. But by the time they bought it, that war was already over. But the point I was going to make is Sony's Betamax was far better technology. It was smaller format, easier to transport, better audio, better video, all that. But still, they did not become the standard. And the reason was VHS was able to grab market share. I think that's the game that's going on now, is Ethereum's doing everything they can to grab market share. And I think Bitcoin was included in the Hinman speech as, for pragmatic reasons, there's nobody to sue. There's nobody to go after. And then if you include more than one, then nobody can accuse you of playing favorites.
That's true.
Well, no, it wasn't just Ethereum. It was Bitcoin and Ethereum. But okay. So I think it was just some smokescreen so that nobody would focus only on Ethereum. But I think that the whole point of their lawsuit was just to buy some time. For that,
you're right.
I think that's why I'm wrong every day. I might be wrong on this, but I think that's why they keep trying to delay it. They just sent another request for several more months of discovery. Are they really going to find out more that's going to change the outcome of the case that they've been sitting on for 8 years? Are they going to find out more in 2 more months? No, but they'll let the Ethereum projects continue to run for another 60 plus days. And that's worth, filing a piece of paper with the court.
That's exactly right. By the way, you may be right. I may be crazy. May just be another lunatic we're looking for. Sorry, I throw a little Billy. Every time I hear something, then it goes back to a song lyric.
Hey, now we're back to the motorcycles.
Yeah, I want to throw this on. You remember this one?
The usual, sir. Please.
100%. That was classic.
That was a great when they used to sit by that chair and then the hair would just blow back. That was some fantastic stuff. And
so earlier we were talking about potential outcomes of the case. So Ripple could win. Well, Ripple could lose. We haven't actually considered that. Ripple could lose. Ripple could win. Hey,
if they lose, it's going to be a fine. That's all.
Yeah, sure. So no, I totally agree with that. So Ripple could lose. We don't think that's likely. Anybody who's been paying any attention doesn't think that's likely. Ripple could win. There could be a settlement, or there could be some other outcome.
Summary judgment, but I don't know how much patience the judge has.
There could be a summary judgment, or there could be yet a fifth outcome. It's the fifth outcome I think is most likely,
Which is?
Once we get past discovery, once Judge Netburn has ruled on whether or not she will allow the fair notice defense, then everybody's cards are pretty much on the table. Both parties, both sides know how strong their case is compared to the other. That's when the pressure's on to get a settlement or to do something before the judge rules or forwards it to court. I think the SEC, once we get to that point, particularly if the judge allows the fair notice defense, I think there's a good chance the SEC just drops it. And here's why. If it goes to judgment, whether it's full trial or something short of that, the risk they run is not just losing, but losing the ability to hammer any of the other 20,000 projects that are in existence. So it's not just they lose the Ripple case, they lose the ability to go after anybody else for anything they've done up to this point, because the case will be decided probably on fair notice. And if there's not fair notice for Ripple, there certainly wasn't fair notice for Shiba Inu or Sushi Swap or somebody else.
Sushi Swap or one of those, yeah. I mean,
yeah. So I think the SEC actually now has more to lose, far more to lose than Ripple. That's one. If there actually is a move to have another federal agency created to be the regulator for crypto, then the SEC might not even be in the running for that.
No,
right? So
I don't think they would be.
No, I don't think they would be either. And if their goal is in this just to delay Ripple and XRP, XRPL, and all those associated projects, then they achieve their goal just by drawing it out as long as possible, but without going so far as to losing the case, losing their ability to prosecute other cases. Yeah, there's some egg on their face and all that, but they get past that pretty quick. And here's the other side pieces of that. If they drop the case once, that doesn't preclude them from filing the case again later, or filing a similar case. I think if you do it twice or something, I think Jeremy Hogan said, then that's considered with prejudice and you can't do it again. But basically I think it's a no harm, no foul, and they could go right after Ripple again or somebody else again with the same type charges. So anyway, I think there's a strong likelihood that they will just pull the rug and say, never mind, we're dropping it. And the other thing, and this kind of goes back to the Brad Garlinghouse quote, is if they just drop it, what kind of clarity do we have?
Zero.
We got no clarity. So we're a year and a half, 2 years down the road, and we've not gained anything in the way of regulatory clarity. We've lost all this money, we've wasted all this time.
Yeah, it's an interesting statement by Rob McDermott. He said that's a win for the SEC, is they wouldn't give up clarification, but you can sue the government for bringing the case in the first place, damaged brand, market suppression, all that. So, I mean, there is sort of a blowback on that. I don't know how far they would get, but again, the CFTC, in my opinion, has already been, like you said earlier, they've already been regulating, they've already been looking at stuff, and you already had one of the CFTC commissioners or members come out and say, hey, back off, Mr. Gensler, because this is our jurisdiction. It's
right.
It's a commodity. It's not a security, and you don't have any reason. Now, I understand there might be some scenarios, but I almost think there were some really good, valid, strong points in the Coinbase proposal. I like some of the things they put forth, but what I like about it, no matter what, people go like, well, okay, now Coinbase is going to do it. Meanwhile, you've basically had legislation or bills introduced from championed by Democrats, by Republicans, by this, by that, going to the House. But I think what happens here with Coinbase is they get that conversation out there, right? They put it out there. It's pretty much the same way Hester Peirce's her safe harbor, right? And all of a sudden, Patrick McHenry kind of takes that and runs with it and turns it into a bill.
Yep.
Once that conversation gets out there and you start saying, hey, here's the framework. I started reading the whole entire thing. I got halfway through it. I went right to the bullet points, and I'm like, if I want further clarification, But I thought there were some really strong
Sure.
sort of things in there I thought made a total amount of sense. And one of them was, if you're going to regulate crypto, how are you going to do it? Why are we trying to put, the square box into the circular hole? It's like we're trying to fit something and retrofit it to something that really, the Howey test, it's got to hit all four prongs of that. I know Gary Gensler talks about the investment contract, and he's like, based on the efforts of others, okay, great. But, a lot of people bought, XRP, they don't know anything about Ripple or do they even care? Look, if you buy if you buy Shiba Inu, right? Or if you buy, any, Elon or Dogecoin, it goes up. Does anybody out there know that Dogecoin has a use case thanks to Flare that they'll be able to stake, 2.5 times, or right? And nobody knows that.
Right.
And do they even care? Right. So that's where we get into these sort of.
I don't think it's about the merits of the case. I think there are ulterior. God, I can't even say the word. Ulterior motives. There you go. And
sneaky.
And those will come out. There's another piece to this that we don't really focus on very much, and that is the 2015 settlement between Ripple and FinCEN, where FinCEN is an enforcement arm of U.S. Treasury Department. And they agreed, and Ripple paid a fine, and they paid a fine for basically operating, and I think it was an unregistered money operation.
Yes.
Okay, so in that settlement, FinCEN, U.S. Treasury, defined XRP as currency.
Right.
Okay, so CFTC has said, oh, it's a commodity. Treasury has said, oh, it's a currency. And now the SEC says, no, it's a security. And they're not talking about just the sales. They're talking about every XRP that's sitting in escrow, every XRP that you and I bought, that James Rule spent, at Walmart to buy his groceries, every single XRP. Well, it can't be all three. That's just laughable. And yet we are.
Yeah. And also too, it's like, one of the things that it doesn't allow for, like I like the way in the UK how they look at it, as far as it could either be a currency, right? It could be it could have some kind of a use case, or it could be some sort of I think it's a commodity or a sort of security. But the thing about it is it could be one, two, or all of them. And here we are trying to say, well, somehow it's a security because it hits all four prongs of the Howey test. And remember, the funny part about this is the Howey test was were really decided by the courts. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting, what Brad Garlinghouse brought out, was he really poked holes with what Gary Gensler said publicly over, like, let's say the last 6 to 8 weeks, which is, Gensler would come out there and say, oh, it's so clear. It's so very clear. My gosh, it's so clear. You can see it. And by the way, we need Congress to figure this out, because if we're gonna really put some, so he's kind of contradicted himself. He's trying to stick to the narrative,
right?
But then on the other side of, he's like, well, and one of the things that I will give Gary Gensler some serious props when he was in that interview, and I thought he nailed this one, and I was like, okay, I put one on the board for Mr. Gensler, but it was when he was talking to, it might have been Tom Emmer. He was like, if you don't like what's on the books now, you don't think there's clarity, change it. Mm-hmm. You're Congress. You have the ability to do that. Go ahead and repeal the law or enact a new law if you don't like it. And what was happening in that hearing was everybody was basically giving away their power. As Congress, we are the ones that make the rules. All these other government agencies enforce the rules. And that's where Gensler really landed a good punch, because he was right. You don't like it? Go ahead and change it. You're Congress. And why are they like, you need to do clarity and you need... But the frustration was coming out. But I think what they're really trying to say, Mark, was it's murky at best. So how are you going to enforce something that's not quite there? I think that's really what they're trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when his talking point is, well, it's clear. And when everybody says, no, it's not clear. Well, yeah, it is. It's clear. Okay, well, is this one a security? Well, I'm not going to talk about individual ones, but it's clear. Everybody knows. And then in the lawsuit, it's, as you referred to it, they're charging them with being, reckless, and they should have known. Well, even today, this year, how many commissioners are there at the SEC?
5. Yeah.
5. 2 of them, 40% of the commissioners have come out publicly and said, we need to provide clarity because there's no clarity.
Yep.
And they've
Weissman
been
and Purse.
fighting. So, okay, well that answers your question right there. If two of the five have come out publicly and said we have not provided appropriate clarity, that's the answer. So that alone, that one statement, that one article that Elad Roisman and Hester Pierce made, the interviews that she's given, all of that should be enough to just wipe out this case just by itself. If it hinges on XRP is a security and Ripple should have known it, because it's so clear, that one little bit of information guts that whole argument.
And that's why the fair notice is alive and well, because, especially when they approached them about the MoneyGram deal, they said, they didn't say we're going to wire them, X amount of millions of dollars. We're going to send them XRP and they're going to sell it on the secondary market. And they're going to take that money and do whatever they want to do with it, invest in the company, pay bills, whatever.
Right.
And they looked the other way, and they did this often. There was a lot of times they did it, because I remember going back years, Garlinghouse said, well, look, we're looking for clarity. We're asking for clarity, but we run everything we do by them. David Schwartz has said that in publicly as well. Like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. And the first time Coinbase is like, hey, we're thinking about offering an interest rate of a measly 4%, but you got to start somewhere. Boom, they slap them with the Wells notice. Like, hey, man, there's going to be a future enforcement here. Back off. I was like, what?
Again, I think they give every indication that they are just about protecting the incumbents, meaning Wall Street, and that Wells notice to Coinbase should be, really good evidence of that. Here's something I got an email yesterday from my bank, and it said, "Hey, we're offering you this premium rate on our new savings account," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't believe it, but okay." And the teaser was 8 times the national average. I'm like, 8 times the national average? That sounds like Celsius. Like, tell me more. And so I open it up. Their rate that is 8 times the national average for savings, 0.5%.
Yikes. That is pretty sad.
So what does that say about the national average, right? But that's what the incumbent banks are offering. And so when you have a Coinbase that, or a Celsius who's also, getting slapped with notices too, or anybody else who's sort of dabbling in this DeFi space, that is a direct threat to their core business model. And so they're going to, it's like we've heard over and over, they are going to fight tooth and nail to protect their core business model.
They sure are, because and a lot of it, the sad part of it, a lot of people don't understand with banks, especially in the US. I don't know how it is in other places, but they basically, they prey on the lower end spectrum as far as earnings. In other words, something happened, you bounce the check or whatever, you withdrew your account, and all of a sudden it's a $35 fine, and the next you don't put the money in there, it's another $35. You get in the hole a couple $100, and again, it's making all these fees. And it used to be, I remember it wasn't that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, it's come on in, we'll give you a radio, we'll give you a TV, and all you have to do is sign up for an account, and then it would make it all back on these fees. And it was just a horrible business model. It still is, on all these fees, and just hurting people, really. I mean, you talk about robbery and how they prey on, the less fortunate. That right there is absolutely insidious. It's horrible what still happens.
That's right. So going back to your opener here is, why do you have places like Mexico and the Philippines and Nigeria that have these adoption rates that are well ahead of the US or Western Europe? It's because they need it so desperately, and
absolutely,
and they from this new type of finance, and they are desperate for it.
Yeah, and I saw Bukele, the president of El Salvador, came out and said, "No, I don't think anything. I'm not too worried about the fact that we made Bitcoin an official currency. I don't think that's going to interfere with getting a loan from the IMF. I think everything's going to be cool." And meanwhile, you got the World Bank saying, you got to give him some credit. He asked the World Bank if they were willing to help him implement it. Well, no, they're going to say no. I mean, he's saying to the IMF is like, I think we're going to be cool getting a loan. You got to really love his attitude. He's like just spitting fire all the time, and he's standing up, and he's like putting on the brave face. But let's face it, man. I mean, like, you're kind of spitting in their eye on one side, and you're like, hey, help us on the other. But I got to give him a lot of street credit. The guy's phenomenal.
Yeah, and what's he got to lose?
Nothing.
Nothing. If the risk is low and the potential payoff is huge. So yeah, I don't agree with a lot of what he does, but I can't say that was a stupid move.
Yeah, but he certainly brought a lot of notoriety to his country. He certainly, especially with this volcano power. I mean, and again, I mean, he's done some stuff. He's done some stuff that's taken away freedoms, which I don't like. I don't like what he's doing there. And I don't say I'm, wholeheartedly endorsing him, but he's classic politician. Look what I'm doing over here while he makes a bunch of moves over there. Look what I'm doing over here while he does a bunch of things over here. So yeah, he has eroded some freedoms. He has changed the way things, and I don't agree. Look, yeah, Mark, we love digital assets. We love blockchain, the whole crypto world, but I'm not so sure that it doesn't make any sense in my book to mandate that you have to accept Bitcoin. Say, look, it's a national currency. Now, if you don't want to accept it, then don't accept it. I mean, just because you made it a national currency,
you make it legal to use,
right?
But you don't have to mandate it,
right? And that's where I say, like, well, okay, that's sort of overstepping it, because then what's next, right? It's like, oh no, now we're going to use Litecoin, and only bodegas can use Litecoin, or you can only use it at the grocery. It sounds odd. You're like, come on, Chip, that'll never happen. It's just, I mean, but 2020 happened and 2021 happened. It's like, hey, man, we're in an interesting time
every day now. Yeah. Oh, and was that the Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times.
I live in interesting times.
I don't know if that's real, but we are in interesting times for sure.
They are, and I'm so glad that I got to see not only the dot-com boom, we got to live that, but also this, this one, like two major disruptions, technology. And a lot of people say, like, well, the dot-com boom was, oh yeah, okay, we've got internet, but the next version of the internet, we're talking about decentralization. We talk about that. I think that's really what's scaring the elites, the IMF, the World Bank, central banks. They can, somebody had written a comment and they said, Chip, I heard you say the other night that, you're going off about CBDCs. And I said, look, CBDCs in themselves are not inherently bad. What I'm worried about is how they're going to be implemented and what kind of controls are going to be put on them by centralized governments, centralized planning, centralized overreach. That's CBDCs. Okay, a digital version of the currency. That's all it is. But it's programmable. And if you say, like, well, you didn't tick that box, you kind of like stepped over the line there, Mark. I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to do whatever. You're not going to be able to purchase this anymore or that, or go somewhere. You're going to be confined to a certain area. That's the possibility of what can potentially happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The way it can be used to control fiscal and monetary policy, for sure. It can be abused. The flip side of this is, go back to a quote from The Matrix, that's the sound of inevitability. Are we going to complain about it and stop it? No. Can we do things to protect ourselves and maybe apply some political pressure? Yeah, sure. But again, are we not going to stop it? Hey, thanks, Jeff. That's awesome.
First time caller, first time listener. These guys are awesome. Oh, that's awesome, Jeff.
Somehow, I don't think that's true. But but then you go, okay, from a pragmatic standpoint, if you can't, it's like going surfing, right? You're not going to stop the waves.
No.
But you can choose to ride one.
That's right.
You can go out there and get yourself out on the board and watch and pick one and commit to it and see if it takes you on a great ride.
There you go. And then but what I'm seeing though, Mark, is I'm seeing that crypto is really bringing people together. It really is. It's pulling people together. It's pulling them into communities. You see a like-mindedness going on. I want to say Jim D's conversation is good, or comment here. He says, we need to put DAOs in charge of CBDCs. Yeah, I agree. Because again, who is going to be the first country that's going to be a DAO, right? A decentralized autonomous organization where it's a true we the people, by the people, for the people, versus like, hey, let me send my rep off to go on my behalf, which sounds great in the late 1800s when, it's travel and everything else. But today it doesn't really work. And let me hit all the lobbyists and see what's in it for me. And then we always say here, and you said, follow the money. But That's where it goes. But anyway, Mark, I want to say somehow that hour flew by. I don't know what happened. We were just in here having a conversation. It's
always fun with you, Chip, and Jeff too. He's lurking out there.
He's out there, man. And it's like, so Jeff will be back tomorrow. By the way, we have a special guest coming in tomorrow. We'll tweet about it a little bit tomorrow. Then we got another guest coming in on another OG, which you will know, Mark, which I'll tell you offline. But we have somebody else coming in on Thursday to end the week. So, Mark, again, we can't wait as long as we did last time. We'll have to bring you back where you can kind of like hang with Jeff and I, because we always enjoy having you on here. It's always just a treat. And I like the way you think about stuff. And if you guys don't follow Mark, in the comments, go ahead and follow Mark on Twitter. He puts out great tweets. He always retweets great stuff. I love to hear, his thoughts. And sometimes when you get an angry Mark, this week he went off a little bit. It was great. He was like, I wasn't going to show the one tweet, but I was like, let people discover it. It was like, but this is great. Every once in a while, you got to vent. You got to let the mat out. As it will be. But I want to give you the closing statement after I tell everybody that you got to click that like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we stream 6 days a week, Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then again, Jeff streams solo on Saturday mornings from 8 a.m. to 9. I almost said 9 p.m., 9 a.m. That's a long rant, like 12-hour rant for Jeff. But anyway, I'll give you the last word, Mark. Thank you for coming in here. Really appreciate it, man.
Chip, thanks so much for having me on again. This is always a blast, always a blast. Okay, last word. Everybody tune in tomorrow night. It's a special surprise guest. I kind of think I know who it is, and if I'm right, it's going to be awesome. So tune in. Thanks again.
There we go. So, okay, hang out after, because we're gonna finish up in the green room. And everybody, that's all I have. I want to thank everybody for coming here, showing support, sharing, conversations, everything that you guys all do. From Chip and from Mark, we are out of here. We'll see you on the next one. Hang out, Mark. We'll see you in a little bit.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.